Oh, hello YouTube, this is DVD Review Studios here, and today I am joined by an alien? And today, courtesy of the kind folks over at TriCoast Entertainment, we shall be reviewing 2017's The Wow Signal, directed by Bob Dawson. This is an interesting documentary film reflecting the history of the radio telescope over the course of several decades. Enticing the audience with how far radio astronomy has progressed, the film begins with a proposition to carry forward, a question as to whether or not the knowledge we have gained from studying the skies can clarify the existence of extraterrestrial life. The prospect of scientific research into the unknown for the purposes of this film is based on the discovery of an unusual transmission signal received on August 15th, 1977.
6EQUJ5.
This signal was nicknamed the Wow Signal by its discoverer, Jerry R. Emmon, with the exclamative signifying the astonishment of this discovery. The signal and its potential for being otherworldly stems from its unusual height, marked as being approximately 30 times higher than detectable radio noise. Instead of delivering a concise argument about what the Wow signal technically means, we are instead given factual accounts of how the primary names of those involved with the study and research perceived the Wow signal. With a transmission signal thought to be unlike any previously recorded, it is a cause for debate as to what this possibly signifies in the long run. The signal's portrayal throughout the first act can therefore argue either for or against the idea of intelligent life reaching out to planet Earth. This documentary film is the culmination of results from many decades of trial and error research, along with intricate study into the build of radio telescopes presented with archival footage. The Wow signal's discovery was made at The Ohio State University and could potentially be considered their peak of research into life beyond the stars. Understood to provoke the imagination behind the study and efforts of radio astronomy, this film delivers in sharing the most exciting and thought-provoking ideas, which come from those who have dedicated their lives to knowing more about the potential of otherworldly civilizations. Hinting at these ideas, writer Michael Shaw ensures that the documentary does not acquire the connotations of a science fiction. Instead, we are heavily indulged by facts and statistics delivered by Bob Dawson's narration, which break down what mankind hopes to achieve by scanning the skies. Director of the Ohio State University search for extraterrestrial life, Robert Dixon goes as far as to describe the Wow signal as
the best evidence we know of coming from some other civilization.
Reinforcing the impact of how life-changing this study has become for those involved. The research into this transmission has escalated over the past few decades. However, a theme hinted over the course of the documentary is how a lack of funding and the lack of key interest may possibly hold back this field of research. The first act provides the key interest of introducing an intricate history into the radio telescope. This is conveyed through simple enough breakdowns of both theoretical and factual fields of study. One of my favourite explanations comes from Tom Burns, who details the electromagnetic spectrum using his rainbow suspenders as a way of breaking down the detectable energy range. This demonstrates the key insight behind how radio telescopes detect the radio waves emitted by celestial objects. Showing the very early years of the functionality behind the radio telescope, we are given segments of archival footage demonstrating multiple ideas of ingenuity. This heavily reflects the talented scientific minds involved with the making of this technology, and therefore a resurgence of radio telescope study post-Second World War, which is matched with the rise in technology of the time. With the exposition provided to us by Tom Burns, we are therefore given the bare minimum of knowledge to see this compendium of theories result in a new way to detect the stars. The usage of archival footage elicits the time frame by sharing the progression to the goal of a standardized design of the radio telescope.
The question of intelligent life is really a big question because it goes beyond just having biology. It's biology that got clever enough to understand the universe.
Venturing forth into the second act, we are detailed with arguably the main topic for discussion throughout the documentary, which is the radio telescope simply known as the Big Ear. This was the telescope responsible for the discovery of the WOW signal at The Ohio State University, managing to cover approximately 70% of the sky. The Big Ear was also responsible for creating radio maps to provide a detailed analysis of the signals beyond planet Earth. Unfortunately, this would eventually lead to the cancellation of the Big Ear project due to budget cuts, which is a topic later explored in further detail. And so without divulging too much into the denial aspect of the WOW signal, it is briefly considered that the signal could have been of Earth origination and not otherworldly. What disappointed me about this in particular is that this inquisitive thread is barely explored beyond the theme of denial. This is then followed by a series of refusals throughout various interviews, stating that aliens have not already been in contact, which feels like a frugal attempt to debunk events such as 1947's Roswell UFO incident. The history of the Big Ear telescope in particular is very heavily detailed, from its origin, construction, usage, and eventually its destruction. This is arguably the main construct for how the documentary unfolds its narrative. Another personal favourite moment is the one-on-one interview with Seth Shostak from the SETI Institute, which is based on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Shostak highlights the possibility of extraterrestrial life under the hypothesis that ET has not yet been falsified, and therefore is still possible. Although ET is not proven as fact, the possibility is enough to warrant the study and research for alien life amongst the stars.
Run, ET, run!
Juxtaposing the idea of this signal being a phenomenon, Shostak shares his thoughts on how he personally looks at the WOW signal discovery.
I find that maybe a little bit, I don't know, overstated to say it's our best case. It's an intriguing case because it's a mystery. We don't know what it was.
Varying signals over the decades have shown potential in the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence. Mysterious signals seen only the once have shown a similar potential to the WOW signal but lack the iconic name WOW for reactionary purposes, which also differentiates it beyond similar discoveries. This interestingly contradicts the idea of the WOW signal being the best evidence from the beginning of the documentary, as this may not necessarily be the case. I also quite enjoyed the retelling of data analyst Robert Gray's own personal attempts at trying to search for the WOW signal, and how his admitted inexperience with what he is actually looking for may therefore lack the necessary requirements in looking for the correct observations. This is interesting for a number of reasons, but what caught my attention was the admittance of how few people were actually looking into this supposed phenomenon. Delivering a steady conclusion, the third act details the harsh reality of how the general public decide to view this particular field in scientific study. The lack of key interest which I mentioned previously stems from a very attractive stigmatism generated by the media in relation to UFOs and alien encounters. The typical stereotype of little green man with big eyes.
Little green spaceman! I am not green.
Of which this just happens to be far more enticing to the average person, as opposed to the reality of trying to locate celestial signals and otherworldly life forms for a radio telescope. Funding is also a struggling factor in relation to the genuine research into extraterrestrial life. The Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia was funded by the National Science Foundation over the course of many years until 2012, where funding began to decrease due to external circumstances. One of the most rewarding sections of this documentary is the attempts at reviving and continuing to fund the observatory. We see this from young high school student and advocate for Green Bank, Ellie White, who creates handcrafted merchandise in order to provide a contribution to Green Bank Observatory's funding. This segment of the film is overall quite inspiring, showing the influence of a young mind with a scientific passion. The documentary concludes on what I would personally describe as a saddening reality in relation to the world's stereotypical viewpoint on the study of the stars. Tom Burns gives a brief tour of the Big Ear Room, which is essentially a museum dedicated to the original complex structure of the same name. At this point, the camera crew request to see the Big Ear in person, of which Burns obliges. After a short walk, we are greeted by the sight of a vastly open golf course and country club in place of where the Big Ear telescope once stood.
I hate to walk on a golf course in my street shoes, but what are you gonna do?
Unfortunately, due to a loss in funding and the land where the Big Ear was positioned being sold, in July of 1997, the telescope itself, with the colossal size of 103 by 50 meters in total, was dismantled in its entirety. Although the telescope was certainly useful and remarkable for its discoveries, it had unfortunately served its purpose and was therefore considered to be obsolete compared to modernized technology. That is, however, not to say that it would suddenly be forgotten, as the conclusive interviews reinforce its importance in discovering the wow signal, which is once again countered by how this signal was known purely by the exclamative in the name, which once again causes debate for its subject matter, of which the audience is then left to its own personal interpretation. And on that note, thank you very much for watching my review on 2017's The Wow Signal. I hope you enjoyed. Special thanks once again to the folks over at TriCoast Entertainment for providing a review copy of the movie. All thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are of my own, and if you wish to check out the movie for yourself, I will put links down below in the description to both the movie trailer along with where you can purchase the movie over Amazon on digital. For more videos, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in my next review.
Are you threatening me?